So let's take a look at number 1. What value completes the square? What's our formula to plug in that number to complete the square? Something squared. Anybody remember? B over 2 squared. And that b comes from our middle number. So here we have -4 over 2 squared. What is -4 over 2? How can we simplify that? -2 squared. And what's -2 squared? -2 times -2. 4.
4.
So 4 completes the square. Any questions on that one? Alright, let's do the same thing for the next. What's our b? For number 3. 6. So 6 over 2 squared. How can we simplify 6 over 2?
3.
3. And what is 3 squared?
9.
None. Perfect. And then what's our b for number 5?
-8.
So -8 over 2 squared. What's -8 over 2? -8 over 2. -4. And what's -4 squared? So -4 times -4.
16.
16. Negative times a negative would be positive, so it's positive 16. Any questions on the first section? Alright, the next part, we have to solve by completing the square. So there's not much room for us here, but we'll make it work. What's the first thing we have to do?
Subtract 17.
Awesome. We got to move that 17 over because our goal is to get just the n, so just the numbers with the variables, the terms with the variables, all by itself. So we got to subtract 17. So we have n squared minus 8n is equal to, what is 5 minus 17?
-12.
-12. Now we need to figure out what's going to go in this blank here to help us complete the square. So we use our little formula, b over 2 squared. What's our b here?
-8.
-8. So -8 over 2 squared. What's -8 over 2?
-4.
-4. And what's -4 squared?
16.
16. So we're adding 16 on the left side. So what else do we have to do?
Add it on the other side.
Add it on the other side. Awesome. Now in our parentheses squared, what goes inside? What goes inside of our parentheses? N minus 4. So the two things that have that squared on it go in the parentheses. N minus 4. And then that's going to be equal to -12 plus 16. What's -12 plus
4.
16? 4. Now how can we solve for n? What do we have to do next? Take the square root of both sides. So this cancels. So n minus 4 is equal to, what is the square root of 4? Plus or minus 2. And then we just have one more step to do to solve for n. We split this up into our two equations, so n minus 4 is equal to +2. N minus 4 is equal to -2. How do we solve for n? How do we get rid of that?
Add 4.
Add 4. So what's 2 plus 4?
6.
So n is equal to 6. And then we do the same thing on the other side. We add 4. What is negative 2 plus 4?
2.
2. So n is equal to 6 and n is equal to 2. Let's do it. So what's the first thing we have to do? Awesome. We want to subtract 12. That way we can get our x's all by themselves and our number all by itself. So x squared minus 6x is equal to, what's 4 minus 12?
Negative 8.
Negative 8. Now we need to figure out what's going to go in the blank here to help us complete the square. So we have b over 2 squared. What's our b?
Negative 6.
Negative 6. And how can we simplify negative 6 over 2?
Negative 3.
Negative 3. So negative 3 squared. What's negative 3 squared?
9.
9. So we're adding 9 on the left side. What do we have to do on the right side?
Add 9.
Add 9. Now in our parentheses squared, what goes inside? Awesome. X minus 3. And then that's going to be equal to, what is negative 8 plus 9?
1.
1. Now what do we have to do next?
Square root.
Square root both sides. So x minus 3 is equal to, what is the square root of 1? Bless you.
1
What's that one thing we can't forget when we take the square root of both sides?
plus minus
Plus or minus 1. So we break this up into our two equations. We have x minus 3 is equal to positive 1. X minus 3 is equal to negative 1. Now how do we solve for x?
Add 3.
Awesome. Add 3. So x is equal to
4.
4. And then we do the same thing in the next one. Add 3. So it's negative 1 plus 3. 2. So x is equal to 4 and x is equal to 2. Any questions on this one? All right, number 11. What do we do first?
Add 15.
Add 15. So b squared plus 2b is equal to 15. What's going to go in this blank here? B over 2. So 2 over 2 squared. How do we simplify 2 over 2?
1.
1. And what is 1 squared?
1.
1. So we're adding 1 on the left side. What do we have to do on the right side?
Add 1.
Add 1. So then we put our parentheses squared. What goes inside of our parentheses? Awesome. B plus 1. And then what is 15 plus 1?
16.
16. Now how do we solve for b? Or what should we do next?
Square root.
Square root. So this cancels. B plus 1 is equal to, what's the square root of 16?
4.
What's that one thing we can't forget? Plus or minus 4. So we break it up. B plus 1 is equal to positive 4. B plus 1 is equal to negative 4. How do we solve for b here?
Subtract 1.
Awesome. So b is equal to, what's 4 minus 1?
3.
3. Do the same thing in the second. What's negative 4 minus 1?
Negative 5.
Negative 5. Caitlin, you're on the ball today. Thanks for participating. All right, let's look at 13. Subtract 5.
Minus 5.
Perfect. So we have p squared minus 6p is equal to negative 5. What goes in the blank here?
B over 2.
And what's our b?
Negative 6.
So negative 6 over 2 squared. How do we simplify negative 6 over 2? Negative 3 squared. And what's negative 3 squared? 9. So we're adding 9 on the left. What do we have to add on the right? 9. What goes into our parentheses?
Plus 9.
P plus 9.
P plus, we have the,
I mean negative 3.
awesome, P minus 3. Got to be careful with that, because even though we're adding 9, it's whatever's squared that goes into the parentheses. And then what is negative 5 plus 9? 4. So how do we solve for P? What do we have to do next? Square root. So this cancels. So P minus 3 is equal to, what is the square root of 4? What's the one thing you can't forget? Plus or minus 2? Plus or minus, yeah. That's what it's called. So P minus 3 is equal to positive 2. P minus 3 is equal to negative 2. How do we solve for P?
Subtract.
So since it's P minus 3, we have to add 3. So what's 2 plus 3?
5.
5. And then again here, we add 3. What's negative 2 plus 3? 1.
5. Oops.
Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. All right, any questions from that section? So notice how we got 2 answers from each question. All right, let's do 15. Solve each equation by taking square roots. These are a bit easier. So our goal is to get b all by itself. What should we do first? Divide by 4. So b squared is equal to, what's 16 divided by 4?
4.
4. And then how do we get rid of that squared on the b? So we take the square root of both sides, so b is equal to plus or minus 2. So just like before, whenever we take the square root of both sides, you have to include that plus or minus. Any questions? All right, let's do 17. What do we do first?
Just subtract 5.
Subtract 5. So x squared is equal to, what's 30 minus 5? 25. X is equal to plus or minus 5. Perfect. Last one. Yay, 19. What do we do first?
Minus 16.
So if 16 is being multiplied to x squared, how do we get rid of that? Awesome. Divide by 16. So you always do the opposite. So since 16 is being multiplied, we divide it to get rid of it. So we have x squared is equal to, what's 16 divided by 16?
1.
1.
I was kind of confused, but so once you square this, what do you do?
So we take the square root. What's the square root of 1?
1.
1, but what's the one thing you can't forget?
Oh, plus 1.
Plus or minus.
So I wrote it.
So it would be plus or minus 1. So anytime you take the square root of both sides, you have to include that plus or minus. Because in our problem here, we could take -1 and plug it in for x, and it would work. We would get the right answer. We could take +1 and plug it in for x, and it would work too. So that's why we need both of them. All right, any questions from the homework?